Hi everyone, welcome to my channel, Tutorlini Test Prep. Today we'll be going over lesson number 18 on how to use Desmos for the digital SAT math. Student produced response. Let's get started. Okay, so first things first. The directions in the Blue Book app tell us that if there is more than one answer, you only enter one. So let's say this question asked for one possible solution to the equation. You could graph this on Desmos and you would see that the solutions are -9, 0, and 4. So all of those are acceptable answers. And we would only put one of them, not all three. So I'm just going to arbitrarily pick 4. That's the one I want to go with. So I would just lock in 4 as my answer. Great. The next thing, I don't even think the Blue Book app, they just tell you this just to give you some peace of mind. I think the Blue Book app prevents you from typing in symbols, but regardless, you can't enter any symbols, mainly %, comma, or a $sign. So for this question, wants us to find the percent change from a percent multiplier. We would use the equation I've talked about in my videos many times, 100 times percent multiplier minus 1. We'd get 146, and the answer would just be 146. We wouldn't put a percent sign. You see the percent sign is kind of already accounted for because it's next to the p percent. So you don't need to do anything special with that. Okay, same thing with a comma. If you got a really big number as your answer, let's say 1,638, there's normally a comma after the 1. You don't need to worry about that. You would just put 1638 as your answer. Again, I don't even think the Blue Book app would let you type it in. And let's say it was a problem with money. For this one, we would just put like 31.80, or we could just put 31.8. They would never ask you this anyway. Just an example. And notice how even though the answer is in dollars, we don't have to put the $sign. Again, don't think the Blue Book app would let you type it in regardless. Just going over this for the sake of being thorough. Your keyboard's not doing something wrong. That's on purpose. Okay, and I think technically we could also put the fraction equivalent, which is 159 over 5. Next, you cannot use a mixed number ever on the student-produced response. You really shouldn't be using mixed numbers really at any time on the test. In real life, everybody uses decimals. In math, you want to use fractions or improper fractions. You're pretty much never going to use mixed numbers in your real life outside of informal contexts like cooking or something. So don't ever use a mixed number. Desmos doesn't even give you the mixed number by default, or I don't even know if it can give it to you at all. It probably can. For this one, we would just put 17 over 3. Always use the simplified one. Why not, right? And the equivalent mixed number would be 5 2/3, but there's no way to type in a mixed number. So if you go to type in 52/3, that would be 52 over 3, which is a different number. So that would be marked wrong. So just completely forget about mixed numbers entirely. For this one, we could also round or truncate to 5 characters, which would be 5.666 or 5.667. More on that later. Never use a mixed number. Next, if you have a simplified fraction that doesn't fit, make sure that you use the decimal. So 124 over 125, if you click the fraction button, it would still tell you 124 over 125. That is 1, 2, 3, 4, because the slash counts as a character. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 characters, and we need 5 or less, 5 or smaller, 5 or fewer characters. And so we can't put 124 over 125, so we would put 0.992 or simply 0.992. Similarly, if our answer was -101 over 100, that's also too many characters. After the hyphen, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 characters after the hyphen. That's way too small. That's way too many. We need 5 characters or fewer after the hyphen. So we would just use -1.01. All right, long positives. So the Blue Book app directions tell you to truncate or round to 5 characters, not 5 digits, 5 characters. So the decimal point counts as a character. So let's say the final step of our work was 36 over 219. 36 divided by 219. This would be the Desmos output. Well, 12 over 73, that's 1, 2, 3, slash 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 characters. So that would work. So I would just put 12 slash 73 and stop. No reason to go and do all this other stuff we're about to do. But just for the sake of curiosity and practice. So let's look at the decimal output. So we could include or exclude the 0. Let's do without the 0 first. So we could do 5 characters with the without the 0 would be 0.1643. So that's truncating, which just means to just read it. You just chop it off. So 0.1643. Now if we rounded, we would look to the number to the right. So the number to the right is 8. That's 5 or bigger. So we round up. So instead of 0.1643, the rounded answer, which would also be marked right, is 0.1644. We could also do this with the 0. So with the 0, there would be 5 characters. Truncated would be 0.164. And also rounded, it would also be 0.164 because the number to the right, 3, is 4 or smaller. So we round down. And when you round down, truncating and rounding yield the same result. So there's really 4 main acceptable answers for this question. Okay, now this might seem really confusing, guys, but for long negatives, it's kind of the same concept. So they say, oh, 6 characters, but remember, the hyphen counts as a character. So it's really like just, 5 characters or fewer, just like before, just don't count the negative sign when you're counting, okay? So just kind of ignore the negative sign as you count. You still got to put it, but just kind of makes it easier if you just remember, 5 characters. Okay, so for this one, negative 57 over 11. So 57 slash 11. That's 5 characters. So I would put negative 57 slash 11. Boom, that would be marked right. I would just stop there. If you wanted to use a decimal, we don't have to worry about any kind of optional leading 0. There's nothing like that. There's a 5 in front, so we have to include that. So 5 characters past the hyphen would be there. And truncated, we just read it, negative 5.181. You notice, guys, I'm doing truncating first because I'm trying to encourage you to truncate because truncating is easier. And rounding, there's an 8 to the right, so we would round up because 8 is 5 or bigger. So it would round up to negative 5.182. So these would be the 3 main acceptable answers for this question. So always remember, guys, your answer has to be 5 characters or fewer, barring a potential hyphen for a negative sign. Great. So a couple common misconceptions. I mean, I'm sure there's way more, but we're just going to talk about 2 misconceptions that I've encountered a lot with students over the years. So the first big one is that some questions require you to round. So some people just kind of gloss over that and they don't read the question. I don't think I've seen this yet on the digital CT, but it could totally show up. So look at this problem. Notice how it says to round your answer to the nearest 100th of a foot. That's the second decimal place. So we're going to set up a unit conversion. And we're going to round to the 100th. So you see, guys, the 100th is where the 5 is. So the number to the right, 6, is 5 or bigger, so we're going to round up. So this would be 0.66 or 0.66. We cannot truncate because the question specifically forces us to round. So make sure you understand the most common rounding. You understand what tenths means, you understand what hundredths means, and then if something says like to the nearest inch or to the nearest foot, that just means to the ones place, to the nearest whole number. So make sure you understand what the ones place, tenths, and hundredth place are, and the most common rounding conventions, which is what I just have been telling you this whole time. 5, the number to the right is 5 or bigger, you round up. The number to the right is 4 or smaller, you round down. Okay, and I suppose you also could put 33 over 50, which is just the fractional equivalent of 0.66, but just do not risk that. I'm just going to put a big X on that. If the question asks you to round, they want you to put a decimal. So just play it safe, put a decimal, even if by some magical coincidence, the fraction is short enough. The other common misconception is that people think they can't use fractions for percents questions. You can use fractions for a percent question. There's no reason why you wouldn't be able to. So this is actually something that's happening in real life right now. I don't know if you guys have seen this. Lots of consoles, but primarily the PS5 has upped the price of their games from $60 to $70. Anyway, so this is the percent change between two values. So we're going to use the equation I talked about in my percents video, new minus old over old times 100. So the old or original is 60, the new is 70, n minus o over o times 100 gives me these two answers for decimal and simplified fraction. So truncated to 5 characters would be 16.66. Rounded to 5 characters would be 16.67 because we round up because the number to the right is 5 or bigger. 6 is 5 or bigger. But this is the point I'm trying to make here, guys. 50 over 3 is also an acceptable answer. It feels really awkward to write and say 50 over 3%, but it is correct. They're not testing you on whether it's awkward or not. They're testing you on whether your answer follows these rules that they made. And 50 over 3 is a simplified fraction that fits in the box. So that would be a correct answer. So don't be afraid to use the simplified fraction, even if it's a strange context, providing they don't mention something about like rounding or something. So 50 over 3%, all good. And we don't need to type the percent sign as we talked about before. Okay, let's do a couple practice problems. So what you guys can do is, when I put the output on the screen, just pause the video and try to come up with all the possible answers. So let's say the final step of your work is 656 over 70, and this is the output Desmos gives you. So 328 over 35, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, because the slash counts. That is 6 characters. That is too big. That probably wouldn't fit if you went to type it in. So we're going to cross that out. That's not an acceptable answer. So providing the question didn't mention anything about rounding or anything, we would have to round or truncate to 5 characters. So we're going to highlight 5 characters. So the truncated answer would be 9.371. You just read it. And then the number to the right is 4 or smaller. So that rounds down. So truncating and rounding, because we rounded down, yield the same result. There's no optional 0 or anything. So this would be the only acceptable answer for this question. Okay, let's say the final step of your work was negative 236 over 556. So my first inclination is always to go and try to do the simplified fraction. So this would be negative 59 over 139. Let's just kind of ignore the hyphen, 5 characters or less. 59 slash 139. Okay, that is 6 characters. That is too many. This is probably not going to fit in the Blue Book app if you try to type that in. So unfortunately, we have to go through all this mental gymnastics of the rounding and truncating. Again, on actual test day, guys, I just start reading it, just start typing in, and then when you run out, you stop. No reason why not to truncate. Anyway, just for the sake of curiosity. So 5 characters, including the 0. Truncated would be negative 0.424. The number to the right is 4 or smaller, so we would round down. So truncating and rounding yield the same answer. Next, we are going to do it without the optional 0. So 5 characters there, and don't forget about the negative sign. So truncated would be negative 0.4244. And then rounded would be negative 0.4245. We would round up because the number 6 is 5 or bigger, so we round up. Great, so there are 3 acceptable answers for this question. Okay, so let's say the final step of our work was 45 over 252, and we get a simplified fraction output of 5 over 28. Well, that's certainly 5 characters or fewer. That's actually only 4 characters. So I'm just going to go ahead and straight away just type in 5 over 28. And on the actual test day, I would just move on. There's no reason to go and truncate and round, and no reason to waste time on that. 5 over 28, providing I did the question right, is hopefully correct. All right, so now let's go over the truncating and rounding. So let's include the 0. So truncated would be 0.178. Rounded, we got 5 or bigger to the right, so that would be round up 0.179. And then if we did it without the 0, truncated would be 0.1785. And then rounded would be 0.1786, because once again we round up because the number to the right, 7, is 5 or bigger. Again, why the heck would you do all that when 5 over 28 is perfectly acceptable and so much easier to read? I have no idea. Even if I try to truncate that thing and I go to type in 0.178, I feel like all those other numbers to the right, there's a chance that like maybe I'll switch around the 8 and the 5 or something and type it in wrong. I think the fraction is just so much easier to see, to read, and to type in. So I would always use the fraction when possible, which segues right into the next slide. So most of that stuff about truncating and rounding, you really, like 99.9% of the time, you don't even have to worry about that, because the answers on the student-produced responses on the DSAT are almost always an integer. So like 5, 0, -8, 100, 521, right? A simplified fraction that fits in the box like we just did, 5 over 28. Or some kind of terminating decimal. So for example, 2.6, 19.8, 3.75, -4.92. Those are all terminating decimals that fit in the box. So you don't even need to worry about anything, right? 99.9% of the time, it's just going to be one of those 3 cases, and you just type in what is on Desmos. Very easy, right? Now, between terminating and non-terminating for fractions, if it's terminating, I don't mind using the decimal. If it's like 7.5, that's not really a big deal. You can use the fraction, but to me, it usually makes more sense when I'm checking the logistics of my work to put like 7.5, because maybe I can use some number sense to check my work. But if it's non-terminating, like the one we did before, 0.66666, I would just use the simplified fraction. I don't know. I just always get scared of truncating and rounding. Like I'll make some tiny mistake and it'll be marked wrong. So you should try to get as comfortable with improper fractions as you possibly can whenever you take any math test. Anyway, this stuff in the box is just personal preference. Like I said, 99.9% of the time, you don't have to worry about the decimals at all. Just take advantage of that fraction button on Desmos. It helps you a ton. It simplifies the fractions for you. Okay, so what's the strategy? Well, if there's one helpful takeaway from this video, besides just, putting your anxiety at ease, it's that Desmos can actually help you provide enough precision to get questions right. So, Desmos, whenever you graph something on Desmos and you use intersection to solve a question, it rounds to the thousandths place. So, these are just rudimentary examples, guys. You should be doing these by hand. It's just kind of the idea what I'm about to tell you might be helpful for a harder question. That's kind of what I'm hoping. So, Desmos tells us 4.667. You'll see they rounded to the thousandths place. Well, 4.667 is certainly 5 characters, and rounding is acceptable. So we don't need to go and actually change it to a fraction. We can just read off of Desmos and write it down. So that would be marked right. Now, there's other answers for this one. I'm just not going to go through all of them. I'm just showing you guys how helpful it is that Desmos gives you enough precision. Now, if it were like 582.6666, you would still just type it in until you run out, because truncating is acceptable as well. So even if there was more characters provided, it's still giving you enough precision to get the question correct. Now, the only thing you need to be mindful of, remember that optional 0 we were talking about? Well, you should keep the optional 0. You should keep it. And here's why. So, look at this example. Again, very rudimentary problem. You should be solving this by hand. And they would never ask it to you like this anyway. They would find some way to ask you for the exact answer. You know what I mean? Like if it was square root of 17, they would put like square root of b, what is b? And you would put 17. You guys see what I'm saying? So it's like they would probably find some roundabout way to give you the exact answer. But let's just say hypothetically there's a question and you solve it, and the magnitude of the number is smaller than 1. So it has a 0 in front of it. So if you put 0.845, that would be wrong, because 0.845 is not rounded or truncated to 5 characters. If you see 0.845, 0.845, that's only 4 characters. So that would be marked wrong. But if you put exactly what Desmos has, 0.845, that would be marked correct, because technically that is rounded or truncated to 5 characters, and that would be marked right. So basically, you can kind of use this to your advantage if you don't know how to do a question. So just get in the habit of including the 0, because, I don't know, from my point of view, in very, very, very niche situations, it increases the chances of you getting the question correct. If you just put 0.845, that would be wrong for this question. There's other answers, probably. There might be other answers on top of this. There probably are. But I'm just putting one that is most convenient based on what the graph told us. Okay. Okay, that completes the lesson. Please like and subscribe for more digital SAT math content. If you're interested in my tutoring services, the link to my website will be in the description. I tutor SAT math on all math subjects from about 7th grade to AP/early college level. Thanks for stopping by, and good luck studying.